It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Today is August 21st, and I want to welcome you. Oh, right, it's Coffee and Cloud Native. Emphasis on the coffee today. Today is August 21st. I want to welcome you to episode 25 of Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins, and, well, every night, my teleprompter freaks out. Every night, I and my army of bots scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and every day you'll find me here breaking technology. Actually sharing the bits that I find interesting. This is a curated list of content. I go through around 200 submissions every night, and I select just a handful of them for the next day's show. If you're watching, now or in the future, please click the thumbs up button on the video so the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. I love putting this show together for you because it helps me end each day with knowledge that I didn't have when the day began. And I'm grateful to all of you who join me not only live during the show to chat with me and whatnot. Good afternoon, Steve. I got the chat over here today. For all of you who join me live, but also for all of you who watch it later, and for all of you who share it, and for all of you who subscribe, I'm just grateful. Cool. So we only have a half an hour. I don't know why I still say that. Every day I start the show and I'm like, we only have a half an hour, so let's get started. And then by the end of the show, I'm like, I'm running out of time. And then I go over. So let's get started. Yeah. Ooh. You all already know about this. There's nothing exciting here. This actually is news from 2 days ago, and well, I didn't get it in the show yesterday. So AWS released a developer preview of the AWS controllers for Kubernetes, lovingly known as ACK, which makes me think of Bill the Cat. Bloom County reference for all of us old people in the channel. The AWS controllers for Kubernetes enable the creation and management of AWS resources from within a Kubernetes cluster. Now, the AWS team has created artifacts. Do we have a nice picture on here for you? There we go. We have a nice picture. They've created artifacts derived from the AWS Services APIs that represent the business logic of how to manage AWS resources from within Kubernetes. Cluster admins select ACK controllers. I'm just going to keep saying that because it sounds cool. They select ACK controllers and they install them into clusters. Then app developers create custom resources that represent the AWS resources. And then the corresponding ACK controller manages those custom resources and the correlated AWS resources, doing all the CRUD stuff, creating, reading, updating, and deleting. I have a huge problem with CRUD. I can never remember what R means because I think CRUD is one of those reference acronyms where people just like, they wanted it to say CRUD, so they tried to find something that fit the R. Create, update, and delete, I get, but reading, I always try to make it say insert. Anyway, CRUD activity. So creating, reading, updating, or deleting the AWS resources. Something that I thought was really cool about the way that they built this is that the AWS account IDs are scoped to a namespace. And since that's the logical boundary for role-based access control in Kubernetes, that makes a lot of sense. What it also means is that the ACK controllers are also scoped to a namespace. There's no cluster-wide controller activity. It currently supports API Gateway, DynamoDB, ECR, S3, SNS, and SQS. And because it's in developer preview, they're only asking people to test them, not to actually go fire this up in production and then watch your cluster, come burning to the ground. Testing it is interesting. I don't know if it was here or in the other article, but they show an example of using it with Kind for the testing. And yeah, so they've got this walkthrough here. And they say that this test will likely take you around 45 minutes the first time around. So it's not lightning fast because it's got to do all of this cold cache startup of whatever. But we're testing it, right? So it's an E2E test. The list of supported AWS resources doesn't seem comprehensive right now, but it does represent the sort of resources that developers are most likely to provision from within a Kubernetes cluster. They have RDS and Elasticache in the roadmap, and they're considering EKS and MSK. MSK I get, but what's the use case you can think of for deploying and managing EKS from within a Kubernetes cluster? Do you think we're going to see like Amazon's version of Cluster API, maybe, or something? I don't know. Let me know in the chat. Who do we have in the chat today? We've got Peter, Devin, good morning, Wojtek, cześć, Steve. Hey, it's nice to see you, Steve. Ariel is here, Nuno, and Brendan. If any of you are watching and not joining in the chat, just come to the YouTube channel and join in the chat. Next up. Oh, next up, Adrian remembers how to switch tabs without scrolling. Next up, we have GKE Dataplane. Now, I talk about Cilium and I talk about eBPF on the show a fair bit. Like whenever something cool comes up. In episode 19, we had the eBPF hub. In episode 3, we had the net data agent for Kubernetes and eBPF observability. And yesterday, wow, time. Yesterday, we talked about eBPF with the upcoming 0.25 release for Falco. Well, Google announced the beta launch of the Dataplane V2 for GKE, which is built on Cilium and brings Kubernetes network policy logging to GKE. I won't go into eBPF and Cilium and stuff again here, other than to say, oh my God, awesome. If you don't know about eBPF and Cilium, like, you should just go and look and love and enjoy. Dataplane V2 with Cilium will enable network policy support in all Kubernetes clusters, so you don't have to choose a CNI based on network policy support. It'll just be there. And this probably means that they'll be using the CNI chaining support that's provided by Cilium, which is fine. eBPF enables things like direct server return for load balancing. So those of you who want to know the origin IP of the request, well, now you'll be able to see it. DSR is cool. DSR is a challenge to implement with standard networking structure. But hey, you know, eBPF, you get it. Congratulations. eBPF and network policy logging will also enable operators and admins to see who is talking to whom and to pick up on abnormal network patterns, denial of service attacks, application compromises, network probes, and all the other nasty stuff that might come from having a container unexpectedly compromised. And apparently that's like the thing du jour. You can get started with the new GKE Dataplane, even though it's in beta. If you fire up a new GKE cluster, you can pass the flag enable Dataplane V2, and this will be available for you. I'm gonna mute myself so I can drink my coffee. It's still warm, so you hear me slurping. We don't want that. That's right. It's a slurp-free show, ladies and gentlemen. Dataiku? I started out saying Dataiku, but I think it's Dataiku, whatever. Anyway. These guys want to make it easy for you to use machine learning and NLP. Now let's talk about NLP for a second. NLP, I almost hit the start show button again. I have a Stream Deck down here that I use for controlling all of this stuff and whatever. It's got all the buttons labeled on it. So for some reason, I think that the start show button is just a great button to hit whenever I'm in the middle of the show. I'm gonna have to move that button again. It's the button that I couldn't hit before because it was on the other side. Now it's over here and I'm just like, ah. I have been working to incorporate NLP, which is natural language processing, into one of my bots so that it can factor in sentiment to the subjects that it grabs off of the internet for the show. Dude, look, I gotta tell you, NLP is hard. It's hard. I mean, it's harder for me, I suppose, because like I'm trying to figure out how to do it in a relatively short period of time, and I cared less about the theory of it and more about just how to implement it. But even if I had the time to sit down with it, it's like a slow crawl to a limping walk to a fast walk to a jog, and I have no idea how long it's going to be before I can actually run with any sort of endurance. So when I heard that Dataiku wants to make NLP easy, I was like, oh, that sounds cool. That sounds like a shortcut. I've got a Mongo database with collections that correspond to the information that this one bot has been, gobbling up all day. And I've been writing Python code with the Natural Language Toolkit, NLTK, or at least I've been trying to, and it's really slow. It's just terrible. But with Dataiku, it looks like I can find buttons. With Dataiku, it looks like I can just point it directly at the collection and have it do the initial processing. Okay, so this is just kind of an overview article of what they do. So I can point it at the collection. It's all right, let me take a step back. So I can point it directly at the collection, and then I can have it do the initial processing and analysis of the data. But what they have is actually a desktop application. It's like an IDE for NLP. So I can point it at resources, and it has plugins directly within the application to do all of the initial filtering and the collocation and the classification and all of this stuff that I just can't really get the NLTK to do with Python. And then I can just immediately start coding against the output instead of fussing around with trying to get the output for this one data set. This type of shortcut, generally I'm against shortcuts where people are able to do things without understanding the details of what they're trying to do. But shortcuts like this, I think are actually extremely valuable. When I'm teaching my Intro to Kubernetes class that I do on Thursdays, I give this example of a Hadoop cluster and how the Rancher application catalog lets you install Helm charts and stuff much faster. And I talk about a developer who's trying to build an app, and they need an app to talk to Hadoop, but they don't know how to deploy Hadoop in Kubernetes or containers. And more importantly, they don't care because that's not what they're being paid to do. They're being paid to build an app, and they just need a Hadoop cluster. And if we make it too hard for them to do stuff in Kubernetes, then they're just not going to do it. They're just going to go do it somewhere else. Then we have this whole shadow IT stuff going on and developer wars and whatever. Shortcuts that get people to where they want to be so that they can get back to doing the things that they need to do, I think are valuable. If I was building a company around NLP and machine learning, then I would need to understand more about it. But I'm just building one app, and these skills are all perishable skill sets. You can learn something, use it once, not use it for 6 months, and all the time you spent to learn it is lost because you're going to forget it because you went on to learn something else. I'm really excited about Dataiku. For those of you who are watching this who understand NLP or machine learning, you're probably totally laughing at me right now because I have no idea what I'm saying. And that's totally okay. I don't need to know how to smelt iron and forge steel and shape wood if I just want to make a shovel so I can dig a hole in the ground and plant a tree. I just need to go and plant a tree. So the other thing that was interesting about this, I look at the world around me and I pay attention to signals. I'd never heard of Dataiku before 2 nights ago. This was supposed to be in yesterday's show, but we ran out of time. I went back today and just scrolled through the bot output for the last few weeks, and it's been in almost every day's output. It's just not been something that popped up in the Kubernetes cloud native world of what I was looking for. And technically, it's not really specifically about Kubernetes and cloud native, other than the fact that you can deploy machine learning models and stuff like that into Kubernetes. But just know that this is probably going to inform a lot of the data for the show to try and narrow it down so I don't have to spend 4 hours a night going through all of the information. Hey, TJ. Good morning. Moving on. Oh, Kopf. Okay. Kopf is a tool for building Kubernetes operators with Python. But, okay, so this is actually a 2-part story. The first part's about the tool. It's a tool for building Kubernetes operators with Python, and it has wonderful documentation to get you started with a template and a real-world use case. Yeah, I don't actually have there. So this is an article about, this is the Medium article. If you go to kopf.readthedocs.io, there we go. It has some of the best documentation that I've seen for a tool. So they cover concept, sample problem, problem statement, problem solution, environment setup, and then slowly go through this real world example of creating an operator to do ephemeral, to roll back in my brain there. So to do PVCs for ephemeral volumes in a Kubernetes cluster. So it's actually like a practical application of learning how to use it. So in this sense, it's not any more special than other tools that we have on the show that let you develop operators in languages other than Go. Now, I do most of my stuff in Python, so anything that lets me stick to what I know is endearing to me, because for all the reasons that you already know. There's a second part about this, which is about this guy, Sergey Vasilyev. Sergey has been the principal developer for this project within the company where he works, which is a company called Zalando. Zalando makes Skipper. We had Zalando on the show yesterday. We've had them on before, and they're actually coming up again later today. Through a bunch of stuff or whatever, This was originally developed inside of Zalando, but they don't really use it anymore. But it kind of became his baby, his muse, his, as he describes it, his little bonsai tree in the garden. And he's been working on it on his own time and actually building features for it for the community that Zalando doesn't really care about. It's not moving forward in his org, so he went to Zalando and said that he would just like to take over the project because he's spending all of his personal time on it. And they wouldn't give it up, even though they're not using it. Well, they would. They wrote us some documentation or some legal whatever, blah, blah, blah. And in his words, he said that it had ambiguous phrasing that would prevent him as the maintainer of the project from using it in most fields and in most companies that trade anything online, which is most of the internet, because Zalando's an e-commerce company. He also goes on to say that surprisingly, this limitation would not apply to any other developer in the world who is not him, according to this document. So he wrote this article on Medium where he talks about like the Nginx story about Rambler versus Nginx, how he doesn't know what the future of this is. He doesn't want to trade away the unknown future value of his application today. So he decided not to sign that document and he decided to just fork the project. So now it's here. He abandoned the history of the project. He abandoned all of its issues. He abandoned its stars. He abandoned its pull requests, the contributors, all of the other stuff in the original project for which he was the maintainer and of which he was very proud. And he did it to start over with something that he felt he could maintain control over and that he could wholeheartedly dedicate his time to. And that's the story. You have a developer who believes in a thing so much that he'll stay true to his desire to share it with the world, to build it, to grow it, to nurture it, and to make sure that it continues to live. So I don't know him. I've never heard of him. I've never heard of his project. I've heard of his company. But I went and starred his repo because I respect a person who has the heart to do that. So based on that, I wanted to share it with you guys and ask that you just go star the repo. Let's give him some support. And if you want to make Kubernetes operators with Python, use it too, because it also looks very cool. Now, Zalando. We've had Skipper on here a couple of times. It's not all gloom and doom. Like, it's not like Zalando did anything wrong. I'm not here being like, boo, big company, smash the little developer. No, Zalando did what they felt was right. He did what he felt was right. That's cool. It takes a lot of courage. I don't know. It takes a lot of courage. So, Zalando. We've had Skipper on here a bunch of times, most recently yesterday with the update that added an admission controller to validate route groups before a misconfiguration takes out the cluster. If you don't remember Zalando, you weren't watching the show yesterday. If you don't remember them, they build a super fast HTTP router called Skipper. And they're a massive online retailer of shoes and other fashionable things. Well, the CNCF gave them an award for being the top end user. Golf clap. Honoring their work in transitioning from on-prem data centers to the cloud. And in the process, there's some really cool stats here. In the process, migrating everything to Kubernetes, Prometheus, CNI, and etcd. Some of that seems redundant. I mean, maybe they're using etcd for stuff besides Kubernetes too, maybe. To deliver a superior experience for over 1,300 Zalando developers, serving over 34 million active customers across 17 countries. That's cool. I kind of think that number should be 1,299 though, because I don't think Sergey is all that happy. Or maybe it was 1,301, who knows? 34 million active customers. That's a lot of shoes. Imelda Marcos is jealous. So congratulations to Zalando for being an excellent model of how to do cloud native properly. And because the internet is weird and percolates all of this stuff up together in batches, about a week ago, Flagger merged support for Skipper into their product. So yeah, so there you go. So Flagger can now use Skipper as it shifts traffic from an existing deployment to a Canary deployment. I just think it's really weird when random stuff all pops up at the same time. I wonder if people out there are like, oh, Zalando's in the news with Skipper, so let's put our thing back out there and see if more people notice, and then I do. Or I just think the internet is weird. I think sometimes we're in a simulation. I'm not the only one who thinks that. Slurp free. Snyk. I like Snyk. Some people probably say Snyk, but I like Snyk. So, Snyk was at KubeCon. They're a neat company. I first met them in KubeCon San Diego, where I did this impromptu interview with one of their representatives that I just never ended up publishing. It was like November last year, and I had a couple of hours to go around the show before it ended. I went to various booths to ask people if I could interview them and record them talking about their product, because I figured, if you can go to booths and people will talk to you, why not just interview them and give them some free coverage online? Which is kind of what I do with this show, right? Well, Snyk were the only ones that were cool with it. Everyone else, much to my surprise, was like, oh, you have to talk to our media team, or you have to pre-approve this with our legal team, and you should have contacted us a month ago. I'm like, really? Really? Like, you'll talk to me? But okay, fine. So it was a total buzzkill. And I just stopped doing it. Snyk was one of the first ones that I spoke to. I went around and talked to a bunch of other people, and then I was just like, forget it. I'm just not even going to keep trying. But it set Snyk in my heart as just being really cool people that just kind of want to get stuff done. So in that vein, they announced a tool at KubeCon this week to find and fix security issues in Terraform and Kubernetes code. This is a theme. Why are we seeing all of these tools that fix Terraform code? Is it because, no, it can't be. It's not because HashiCorp's done anything wrong or Terraform writes bad code. I think it's because of shortcuts. I think it's because people are deploying stuff without understanding what they're doing. So how does this play back to like my NLP thing and whatnot? Well, you know what? If I'm going to write code for a bot that can process natural language and spit data out that I can consume, I can probably screw that up pretty safely. But if I don't know anything about system administration or how to build secure systems, and I'm just copying and pasting Terraform code from the internet and then deploying stuff out there, it's probably a problem. And it's a problem across the board. So it wasn't very long ago that I actually made fun of a company in one of my YouTube videos for saying that developers need guardrails, because I thought it was insulting to developers. Like, no adult wants to be told, oh, you need training wheels. Yet the truth of the world we live in is that the lack of education and the speed at which technology is moving is costing companies huge amounts of money through misconfiguration and vulnerabilities. How do you reconcile that? You use a tool like this. So Snyk IAC is available both for free and as a commercial add-on to Snyk's paid offerings. I don't know how that's going to work. You can get it for free or you can pay for it. Your choice. The article on, I don't remember, not this one, but I found this through a Newstack article or something, it was funny because it says, it may be a while before cybersecurity teams fully trust developers to implement the appropriate security controls. Well, you think? He was saying that developers are going to write bad code and then they're going to use something like this to fix it, and then they're going to hand it off to the DevSecOps, whatever ops people that are going to actually deploy it, and they might not trust it. Okay, yeah, probably you're right. It's going to be a case of trust, but verify. So let the developers build their code, let them scan it, let them fix it, but don't trust it. Scan it again in the pipeline. Scan it when it goes out to production. Scan it in production. Lock it down so it can only communicate with the things that it needs to use. And then monitor the heck out of it to make sure that it's behaving. Because that's actually where we are. I used to make fun of people who thought the internet was dangerous. This is many, 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 many years ago, because it was like the Wild West, but it wasn't really all that bad. Now I say the internet's like a bad neighborhood. And basically what we've done is we've spent all of this money to build an infrastructure for monitoring misbehaving children. And I think that the further down the chain we can shift education to write good code and understand security vulnerabilities and whatnot, the better off we'll be. How do you think Snyk feels about this? Nathan McKinley figured out that Domino's Pizza has an API, and he wrote a Terraform provider for it. So you set up the configuration with the identifier of a store near you and your credit card data and your name and what you want to order, and you apply the plan. And he says that instantly you'll get an email confirmation, and 45 minutes later you're going to get a pizza. This is for real. That's really cool. Oh, Popeye. How many of you seen that terrible Popeye movie with Robin Williams in it? There are not a lot of movies that I won't watch all the way through. I watch a lot of movies. And I watch sometimes you pick a bad movie, but it's like, okay, whatever. We'll just turn it into like an MST3K and we'll just mock the heck out of it. But Popeye? No, I couldn't do it. I mean, well, even Bad Boys for Life was better than Popeye, but barely. So here we have a tool for sanitizing Kubernetes clusters, which is actually a misnomer. It doesn't sanitize anything. It reports on things and it does it wickedly fast. In addition to doing all the best practices stuff and whatever, that's kind of just the minimum viable, whatever, for this sort of a tool, it also scans for unused resources like service accounts, config maps, secrets, PVCs, or orphaned resources like services that don't have any pods matching a selector. It has 4 output icons, which I'll show you in a second. I'm pretty sure that it corresponds to okay, not sure, eek, and oh my god. You can run this locally as a binary directly from a machine. You can run it locally as a container, or you can actually run it inside of a cluster as a job or a cron job. It outputs human readable form. Human readable form? Adrian can talk. Hang on a second here. It outputs okay, there we go. It outputs in a human readable form or JSON, YAML, HTML, JUnit, Prometheus, scrapable dump, or they're really funny. Like it can output without all of the color, and they call it Jurassic because it's like, oh, if you're a dinosaur and you don't care about, you know, Xterm 256 or whatever. And I'm sorry I can't make this any larger, but you can see this is just a report on my DigitalOcean cluster. And so, for example, I run some OpenFast stuff out there that I scale down to 0. And so it's reporting that there's a service that has no pods that are matching it. Well, I know that's okay. It also gives you a score. You can have it just output a straight score. So my score is a B. We all know that my cluster needs some help. And that's one of the things I'm looking forward to working on this weekend with the Magalix output, with this, with some of the other tools that I've been showcasing on the show. So yeah, so the icons, if I scroll this thing back up to the top, woo, yeah, so there's the eek, it's like the, that guy. And then the little explodey things are oh my god, and then like lots of cool check marks. Anyway, it's pretty neat. It has, the sanitizers are broken into groups, so you can turn them on or off. And there's a configuration file called spinach.yaml, get it, spinach? Okay. You can use, some of you probably don't even know who Popeye is, you darn kids. It has a configuration file that you can use to control how strong it is on each run. Get it? Spinach, strong, Popeye? I'll be here all week. Actually, I won't, because it's Friday. I had a lot of fun playing with this last night, so I wanted to share it with you. And that takes us now to the kube of the day. No, that takes us to the tool of the day. Tool of the day is kube-forensics. This, hang on a second. I have my notes on a teleprompter so that I can look at you and talk at the same time, and sometimes it just stops working, which makes it really hard to read my notes. All right, so we're just gonna make this up. All right, so you got kube-forensics here. This will, oh, there we go. Now it just like scrolled. This is designed for snapshotting pods and saving them out to S3. So imagine a conversation at a company who just got owned. And so it's like, somebody's like, oh, crap, our app just got owned. What do we do? Somebody else is like, quick, restart it before anyone notices. They're like, oh, but what if they come back and they own it again? Well, they're mining crypto, so we better get it fixed quick or we're gonna get fired, so just restart it. And by doing this, you've lost any chance of figuring out what happened. But you're in the situation, you don't wanna keep it running, so what do? And that's where a tool like this comes in. It does a checkpoint snapshot of the state of the running pods. It basically does a combination of Docker inspect, Docker diff, and Docker export, and then it pops it out to S3. The thing about this is you need to have it already installed because probably when bad stuff is happening, you're not going to want to go and install this. However, is installing it into your cluster an admission that maybe you're going to get hacked? I don't know that I would feel comfortable just having this thing sitting around either. But I can imagine this being in a runbook, and I think that if you are at a company and you do have public-facing stuff, you do need to have a runbook of executable procedures in the event that bad stuff happens. It's like nobody ever wants to restore from their backup. Nobody ever wants their cluster to catch on fire, but these things are going to happen. So you plan for it, you test your plan, and then if it happens, you execute the plan. And if the plan fails, then you revise the plan and you move on. So I think this is a useful tool. The only thing about it is designed right now for AWS. The S3 credentials need to be on the policy applied to the host itself, although there is an open issue for somebody to fix that and make it more configurable with something like KIAM to be able to control it from within the cluster. That's all for today. Let's just really quick check the chat. Oh. Hello, wife. So everybody, please, if you're in the chat, say hi to Lisa. That's my wife. She is in her studio over there. Lurking. So that's all I've got for today. I will, of course, post all of the links in the video description and the Git repo as soon as the show ends. And if you follow me on Twitter, you will get a notification when that happens. If you have something that you would like me to consider for the show, please hit me up and let me know. My contact details are in the video description, and you can also tweet with the CNCN hashtag, and I will pick it up. If I mention a tool that you use, please tell me in the comments. And of course, if you liked what you saw today, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, be sure to click the little bell to get notifications when the next show starts. I will be here every weekday as long as there is something to talk about. And I don't even know what time it is. Oh, it's 9:41 on Tuesday, January 9th. Thank you, iPad. It's 8:02. Okay, so we're at our normal going overtime. Thank you all for joining me. Have a great weekend. Keep learning. I'll see you next week. Oh, one more thing. I want you all to say goodbye to being in this studio. I tested this out for a week, and it actually increases my workload. And I collected a bunch of feedback from all of you, so thank you for that. And starting next week, we will be back at my desk. So I will see you there. Bye.